Welcome to Tech Talk Live, a rundown of technical ideas and topics to help improve your knowledge of all things Comrex and general tech in the world of broadcast and content creation. Here's your host, Chris Crump.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode number 4 of Tech Talk Live. I'm Chris, and all of us at Comrex are glad you could join us. We're streaming live on our Comrex page on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and you can send us questions and comments to be read on the air. So make sure you do that. Just pop in there, let us know, and we'll read them live on the air. Today, we're going to review our new Gaggle and Hotline, our Gaggle Plus Hotline subscription service with our technical director, Tom Hartnett, just in case you weren't able to drag yourself out to Las Vegas to see that at NAB. IEEE Broadcast Technology President, Paul Schulens, is going to join us, and he's going to discuss the recent solar eclipse and some cool stuff about astrophotography. And we're going to be learning about some issues you might encounter with hotel internet and some things you can do to avoid connection issues. But to start out with, let's ask...
Welcome to Tech Talk Live.
Let's make sure we hit
a rundown
the
of
right
tech.
Let's ask a techie. Okay, so our techies are all day long talking to customers to help them solve issues and a variety of things that come up out in the field. Techies want to make sure that you get the most out of your products, and today, Techie Paul Santolo is here to talk about Crosslock VPN Reliability Layer, which is one of our secret sauce little items, and how to create a manual crosslock connection. So welcome, Paul. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
You know, I'm not nearly awake enough, even though it's 11. Because I've only had 4 cups of coffee. I need a lot more than that, typically. Going for it again. I got to tell you, NAB, I still have some desert brain, so I'm still trying to catch up. Hitting the wrong buttons, not doing the right stuff, but I think we'll get through it. It'll be fine. So maybe next year you can join us out there, Paul, in the desert, and you can give some tech support to our fine customer base. Probably one of the things that you get a lot of is what is crosslock, what is switchboard, what's the difference between the two? I mean, we explain that to people all the time. And when is crosslock usable? And why would I ever want to create a manual crosslock connection? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, I'm happy to comment on that, Chris. And you're correct. We do get a lot of comments quite frequently in respect to what's the delineation between one method versus another. And so when you're dealing with crosslock, it's very good, as you said, a lot of secret sauce that goes on behind the scenes to establish a stream between 2 codecs. In the respective out in the field, you're probably better off using switchboard. It's a very easy method to establish your connection back to your receiving unit at the studio, typically. When it comes to manual crosslock connections, though, we typically recommend to utilize that method when you're dealing with an STL type of configuration. So if you have something like a studio location and your tower location or transmitter location, you want to make sure that those 2 locations are nailed up 24/7, and just not eliminating that dynamic layer between the switchboard server. So you're going to have a complete direct point-to-point call. And there's a way to set that up that we typically recommend. It's essentially marrying the 2 units together. And I'm going to bring up a couple units on my side that will help illustrate how we actually establish that call. So give me 1 second here while I get this squared away.
Okay. So Paul, let me ask you while you're
this
looking for stuff.
Yeah.
What is crosslock going to get me that just, a regular Comrex access or Bricklink connection won't get me? I mean, obviously, you guys are, we're dependable when we make a connection. Crosslock does what for me?
Sure, that's a great question, Chris. So essentially, what will happen is that there's a lot of error correction and a lot of understanding between the 2 locations So essentially what the two units will do is examine how the data is going across in a live capacity. And right out of the gate, there's a lot of secret sauce that gets involved in the back end, a lot of ARQ, there's some FEC as well. So there's a dynamic ability to watch the network layer, which really aids in the ability to mitigate around any sort of like adverse network condition that you might encounter out in the field. I certainly it's a recommended type of method these days compared to certainly a traditional brick normal style call that we used to recommend. But you can still actually apply a brick normal connection. That's fine too. So I just want to verify on your end. Are you able to see my screen at this time?
We are. That's beautiful. And by
Okay,
the way,
great.
we all know that
Okay,
the internet
excellent.
is goofy, and it doesn't always work perfectly sometimes. And I would have to say marginal networks. And if you've got internet up on a mountaintop, and AT&T or Comcast says, "Oh yeah, we guarantee it, it's not going to be a problem," it's not going to be a problem until it gets wonky. And I think that's where crosslock and all of its little tricks and mechanisms come into play. And as you said, crosslock as a manual connection is a much better than using switchboard, which basically does not guarantee that it's going to be connected all the time, because that's basically talking to a server. So tell us a little bit about setting up a manual crosslock connection.
Sure. So essentially, it's a two-part process. And if you look at my screen here, you'll see that I have Bricklink A. Are you able to see Bricklink B if I click on that?
Negative.
Negative. Okay. Oh, well, just want to make sure. I'll change that in the view. Okay. So to start, you'll see I already have a connection here already that's applied to from Bricklink A
I
to
think you might
Bricklink
need to
B.
share that one as well.
Okay. You're not seeing A?
We are seeing A, yes.
Okay, all right. So I'll just go over some of the details. I'll switch over and you'll be able to see B. That sounds great. Okay, so when we take a look at this, I'm going to stop this connection here. I've actually set this up, but I'm going to set up a new one here. We just have to include some information from the first Bricklink to point towards the second Bricklink, and this can be done with other devices. It doesn't have to be a Bricklink device. But essentially, if I create a new entry here, I'm just going to give it a quick name here. Bricklink 1, and I'm going to point towards the IP address of the Bricklink I want to have as a destination. And I've put in the port number as well. And essentially, I want to point towards the MAC address of the corresponding unit. So I'm going to go ahead and get that. I'm going to copy and paste that here on the side. Try that one more time.
And you can get that from Comrex Device Manager, or you can actually look at the GUI inside the unit, and you can see the MAC address right at the top. And then you can copy and paste that. And that's going into the
That is correct.
Field,
You
right?
are.
Switchboard ID field. Yep.
That is correct.
Perfect.
Well, yes, it is considered the switchboard ID field. You're exactly right. Yep. Okay. Okay, so I would then put in the, we're just going to go ahead and edit this. I would actually put in the, oh, we're not actually, okay. There we go. You just copy and paste that in. So now I have the IP address and the MAC or switchboard ID of the corresponding unit that I want to reach. You can set other parameters as well, such as a different profile or its password, etc. But we're just going to keep it simple for now. And then on the corresponding side, and I'm going to switch that over. Give me 1 second here so you can see it. Okay, now you should see the secondary unit.
And we're switching over to the B unit now. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is correct. And you should see that at the top of the screen as I
And look
wave
at
my
that,
mouse,
there's
Bricklink B. Excellent.
So we
Okay.
did all of
So
our settings on
you'll see I've
Bricklink
already
A.
set this up.
We basically are pointing it at the B unit, and now we're going into the B unit, and we're letting the B unit know all of the particulars on the A unit.
That is correct. Yep. And on your workflow, you don't necessarily have to add all the details in. So as I illustrate here, I'm going to show you that when I bring up the details, I'm going to bring I'm going to essentially create a corresponding peer on this side. I'm just going to call it peer for now. I don't have to put in the IP address unless I want this unit to initiate a call. So I'm going to skip that for now. And I'm going to put in the corresponding switchboard ID of the other side. And then that is already locked in there. So now I'm going to go back to my original screen, Bricklink A. Go back to A here. And now you'll see that when I'm actually going to select this entry, press connect, and it's going to take a beat or two, and it's going to create this cross-lock connection. We'll see we have now an RX TX direction going on. I'm going to go to the performance. We'll actually be able to see our data here under the cross-lock section. And there we go. There you have it. You have a two-way full duplex cross-lock connection between the two units. So it's fairly simple to set up. I would recommend that if anybody has any questions, we do have details in our manual, but you can certainly reach out to our techies at 1-800-237-1776, but also techies@comrex.com. We're happy to offer assistance if anybody ever gets stuck, but it is relatively easy to establish this connection.
And there you have it. You got two Bricklinks connected using a manual cross-lock connection. And crosslock is doing all its magic. It's basically making sure the devices are staying connected. It's retransmitting lost packets. It's load balancing if you've got multiple networks. It's quite the little magic trick. So we're quite proud of that. Hey, Paul, thank you very much for the info on setting up a manual crosslock connection. If you don't mind, I'd like you to stick around for this next little segment because you could probably offer some tips and tricks. But one of the things that we'll talk about is something that you could probably help us out with. So thanks for your
Sure.
help with Ask a Techie.
My pleasure.
So one of the popular features of the Access NX is that it is portable. It is a very portable device, and we're quite proud of it. And there are tens of thousands of them used for live broadcast every day, and there's probably some being used right now. One of the things that can be really frustrating is trying to connect to hotel internet. So on today's Feature Focus, we're going to offer a few tips and tricks when talking about our popular Access NX Portable. One of the things that I hear from customers a lot is I can't connect my access to the internet because it's asking for, well, the screen doesn't come up. So I've got the web browser screen on my Access NX Portable, and I'll just show that real quick. If we go to web browser, I'm going to kind of zoom in on this here real quick. Okay. Might not be able to see it because my lighting is all screwed up. Let's try this. Let's try that. Oh, nope, still not. But you can bring up a web browser, and when you plug the Ethernet into the side or plug the Wi-Fi into the side, it might come up and it might say can't access website. We've found that probably if you're at a Marriott, 9 times out of 10, they have some really weird scripting where you can't necessarily use the Marriott Wi-Fi. One of the things that I tell people to do is use a laptop and set up internet connection sharing on that laptop, and then use a crossover cable from the laptop into the Access Portable. So use the Wi-Fi, connect to the hotel Wi-Fi using your laptop, go into internet connection sharing. I'll show you real quick in Windows internet connection sharing. So I'm just going to add that real quick. And you'll see that I've got a little window here where I'm looking at the network, and I'm going to go to adapter settings, or at least I thought it was, because let's see if I can get to it. Fun with web browsers, too many things open. Let's see if I can go over here. Okay. Paul, you should be able to see me go into adapter settings. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, I can see it. Yep.
Okay. So if I go to the Ethernet network and click right mouse button, click on it and go to properties, there's a little tab in there that says sharing. And under internet connection sharing, you're going to tick the box that says allow other network users to connect through the computer's internet connection. So if I had a Wi-Fi connected, so if I had a little Wi-Fi adapter over here, I'd select the Wi-Fi, I would share that, and that would share that Wi-Fi with every other internet connection that I've got attached. So it's a real simple little process, and it's something that our techies well know. And you probably talk to people about it all the time. Isn't that correct?
That's true. Yes, we do have calls that come in, and people will email us in about various hotel obstacles that they might run into. One note I will say about the cabling is that, and this is kind of interesting, many people don't have an Ethernet jack on their laptops these days. So they sometimes will have to utilize an adapter that will run from USB, whatever format that is, to an Ethernet line. So just be aware of that. That's one of the pieces of advice we usually recommend people. If you're going into a hotel, you might want to have some ability to get onto the LAN. That way you can run that into your codec if need be.
Yeah, so the other thing I tell people, especially there are a lot of morning show talent that travel all over the country. If they know they're going to be at a specific hotel and it's a Marriott or a place where they've had problems with internet in the past, get on the phone with the general manager, tell them that you're coming in and that you need a wired line with unimpeded access to the public internet. Basically, they will talk to their IT person at the hotel, hopefully, or you could ask if you could have the IT person from the hotel give you a call and see if you can work out these issues before you get there. That tends to work well, especially if you have a really big show like a big professional sporting event coming up or convention coming up. Making sure you make arrangements before you get there is always a good idea. One other thing I would tell you is that if you need to use your laptop and you're having problems with the hotel internet in general, you can also use a gateway mode with a 4G LTE connection. So you plug the 4G LTE connection into your NX portable. You go into network under Ethernet port. You put that into gateway mode, and then you can use a cable from your access portable into your computer if it does have an Ethernet port. Any suggestions you'd like to add to that, Paul?
I would say another thing to be aware of is the cable itself. Traditionally, a crossover cable has been recommended, but many of the modern adapters today have an auto sensibility. So sometimes you can get away with just using a standard cable.
Oh, cool. Yeah, if it's a gigabit Ethernet RJ45 standard cable to an RJ45 that's gigabit, you don't need a crossover cable anymore, which is a beautiful thing. All right, so that's our
Indeed.
little Tom Hartnett. So Paul, thanks for sticking around for this, and thanks for helping us out with Feature Focus.
My pleasure, Chris.
If you weren't able to drag yourself out into the desert for NAB this year and you're curious about the latest developments in Comrex, you've come to the right place, because Comrex Technical Director Tom Hartnett is here to discuss a new addition to our Gaggle subscription service. I'd like to welcome Tom Hartnett to Tech Talk Live as he puts on headphones. Hey, Tom. Welcome to
Hey,
Tech
Chris,
Talk
how
Live.
are you?
How you doing today?
As they say in Boston, I'm wicked good.
I keep on telling people wicked good. I keep on telling people I still have desert brain, still kind of dried out, still trying to catch up, still trying to rehydrate. drinking coffee is probably not the best idea for that, but it helps a little.
There you go.
And it seems like we've developed some delay in our communications here, but we're going to keep pushing through. So one of the things that we featured at NAB this year, in addition to our the well-known Gaggle subscription service, Gaggle has been out for about a year. We've got lots of people using it to do contribution over the public internet from a remote location, just using a common web browser. And one of the things that we've been talking about for a long time is cell phone calls on the air and how incredibly bad they sound. And I think we've kind of got an answer for that. And Tom, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the impetus to this whole project, all of the things that you've tried and where we're at now.
Sure. So this goes back to ancient times in 2011 to 2013 time span. And that's when the carriers at first started talking about 4G. And along with 4G came a new way for the mobile carriers to be delivering their voice services. And as part of the specification for this new voice over LTE service, the encoders, the audio encoders that are used for the voice channel were upgraded from the old-fashioned encoders that would try to emulate what a pot call sounded like. In other words, very, very narrow band, very thin, very tinny sounding, into something that was more wideband, more easy to listen to. So that was spec'd in the early 2010s. As LTE got deployed, it started to become available more and more nationwide. And as that was happening, I was getting very, very interested in how, as always, I can leverage this existing technology for broadcasters, because that's what I've been all about for my entire career, is trying to get telephones off the air and trying to find ways that technology is progressing that we can leverage that will allow us to make phone-ins sound better. I mean, we've always done that, obviously, with devices that require a box on each side, like our frequency extenders, our POTS codecs, ISDN, all of that stuff, all that legacy stuff always required that you have a box on the encode side and a box on the decode side. But here along came a technology that just using a phone and not having a lot of complicated stuff in the studio allows you to improve the quality of phone calls. So I got very, very interested in this very early, spent a lot of time on it, having conversations with the mobile carriers, with experts in the field, and to be honest, running down about 7 different dead ends on trying to find a way to deliver this wideband audio into the studio. It was very, very frustrating
Tom,
for a lot of
let me
years.
just ask you a quick question.
Sure.
If you don't mind, let me just ask you a quick question. It seems like it would be a no-brainer for you to be able to call up AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile and say, hey, cell phones sound really horrible on the radio. We've got this great idea. Can you help us do this? They should just jump in and make it happen. What was the deal with that?
The answer was always the same. How much money will we make on this service? And when you look at the broadcast world compared to things like the enterprise level conferencing world, we're pretty small players. So they were never able to internally justify a project to get that high quality audio off their network and onto something that would allow us to deliver it to the studio. Does that answer your question, Chris?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. So we're working on this. We know this is a world changer for the broadcast environment, and finally, we find a way to do this. And we're going to step back a little bit, I think, at this point, and talk about our Gaggle service for those who are not completely familiar with it. Let me ask you, Chris, if you can just give a basic intro to Gaggle, and we will, and I'll pick up after that, telling you about Hotline.
So Gaggle is something that utilizes a technology that those of you who are familiar with our Opal product might know a little bit about. It uses a technology called WebRTC, which is based on web browsers. So if you have a common web browser on your smartphone, on your computer, something like Mozilla Firefox, Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Safari on a Mac, you basically have a professional audio codec in a web browser on your computer. And just by receiving a link, a guest can click on that link and connect to something on the other side. In the case of Opal, it is our WebRTC server called Opal. In the case of Gaggle, it connects to the Gaggle subscription service. So you can log into a cloud server that we have called Gaggle, and you can send a link up to 5 people, and it will internally conference those callers. So you send out the invites, everybody clicks on it, they all meet in the Gaggle interface. Everybody has their own internal mix minus. And then the moderator of the Gaggle then hits connect to codec, and it connects to an access or a brick link back in the studio. So one of the advantages is that with Gaggle, if you already have an access or a bricklink codec, you are able to connect easily to Gaggle just by using a simple setup menu in the codec. And Opal is the server. It's a box that you buy and you own that. It sits in your studio. It interfaces with your on-air console or routing system. But Gaggle is a cloud service. And because of that, we're able to introduce some additional features to it, and that's where Hotline comes in. And the new service that we introduced this year at NAB is called Gaggle plus Hotline. And Tom, I'll let you take it from there.
Okay, so Chris, can you enable the screen that I'm trying to share here? Is that something you can? There we go. Okay.
Oh, screen.
So this is the Gaggle interface you see when you log in. You're looking at the an imaginary conference happening in 1945 between the Yalta participants. So you've got a nice little dashboard here showing you who's speaking, and the moderator of the Gaggle can easily mute people, kick them out, send them messages off along the side and everything. The sort of things that you used to be able to do in additional conference. The difference, of course, is down here on the Connect Codec button, which allows you to make a nice, clean, and high quality link to your studio codec, which then delivers Gaggle out some nice professional level IO right to your console. So that's a very nice way of getting that done. So we can kill that screen share if you like, Chris. So what we've been able to do, and if you can pull up the graphic again that shows what we're doing there. Okay, so your phone calls sound terrible on the radio because every time you make a mobile phone call to another mobile phone, it does not go through any of the legacy telephone system. Now, when you make a phone call to anyone else, to a studio line or to a studio VoIP line or anyone else, your system will always and automatically, your audio will be cut down by these transcoders that exist in the telephone network to the worst possible quality. And this is for compatibility reasons because they don't know necessarily what's on the other end of the call. And if they ship you the wrong thing, you won't be heard. So that is this sort of unassailable truth that anytime you dial a studio, you're going to get crunched, killed, destroyed audio-wise to get to the studio. So that's the top half of this is an illustration of that happening. Now on the bottom half, you'll see what we've done is we've made from our Gaggle server direct connections to the three major US mobile providers, AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon. So when a mobile phone calls a number that is associated with your Gaggle account, it is connected directly through without that transcoding operation happening, and it hits Gaggle using the high quality encoders that are native in your cell phone. So you do not experience the transition or to thin, grating sounding audio. It's maintained throughout Gaggle. Now, if you have a conference happening in Gaggle, that's great. You'll be added in as one of the users, and you'll see your meter activity, and you'll be able to be muted and kicked out by the moderator the same way as any other Gaggle participant. Now, if you don't happen to be running a conference at this moment, which a lot of folks won't be doing, you can set up Gaggle so that phone call is automatically sent directly to the codec in your studio without having to log into anything. You can pin protect that phone number that we've given you. So you can assign a 4-digit PIN to make sure that nefarious actors don't get into that phone line. But anytime that phone line is called by somebody who's a reporter, a contributor, or even if you give the phone number to the quarterback or the mayor, that call will be established directly to your codec and will sound wideband. It won't have the nastiness of a traditional phone call. So I know that we have a little audio demo available, Chris, and if you'd like to run that for us, this is what we were introducing at NAB. A contrast, the first thing you'll hear is a typical legacy phone call on the air, which we're all familiar with how that sounds.
I'm calling from a legacy mobile phone. This is probably what your phone calls sound like on air today. The legacy telephone network filters out a lot of my voice spectrum for efficiency. This makes callers sound thin and grating. The sound is very fatiguing to listeners.
And then, of course, the wideband audio
Okay, good.
is a huge difference. And this is an example of that going through Hotline.
I'm now calling into the Comrex Gaggle service using a modern HD voice-capable mobile phone. This is not an app or a web-based call. I simply dial an ordinary phone number from my phone's keypad. Because connections from mobile carriers to Gaggle don't get filtered and downgraded, the full fidelity of my voice on this phone call is preserved.
So when we were at NAB, I had how that cut was made, and I can tell you truthfully that was over a T-Mobile phone connection to my codec via Gaggle. So there was no trickery involved. That's really what phone calls will sound like when you've enabled the hotline feature into the Gaggle service.
Well, I'm pretty excited about politicians or a sports figure who doesn't necessarily want to put an app on their phone. They don't want to click on a link. They're just so used to and comfortable dialing a 10-digit phone number. It'll be a nice demark from other ways that people are expected to connect to a radio station these days.
So that's what we've got. I'll throw it back to you, Chris, unless there's any questions. I actually lost your audio, Chris.
So, Tom, for some reason, I think the internet is a little bit choppy on your end.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to thank you for being with us on Tech Talk Live today to talk fact. So many things going on. And we look forward to speaking to you again soon on a Tech Talk Live.
My pleasure, Chris.
Have interesting and unusual hobbies outside of our chosen profession. And lots of us, for example, are ham radio operators. There are probably has one of the coolest hobbies on earth, and I guess you could say off of the earth also. IEEE Broadcast Technology Society President and broadcast consultant Paul Schillens, we would like to welcome you to Tech Talk Live. How are you doing today?
Hey, Chris, I am doing fine. Thank you so much for inviting me. Great to see you and great to see Tom. Sorry I missed Tom at NAB. It was a really good show. And I want to say, back in my days in Boston, which weren't too long ago, we really enjoyed working with Comrex. And the fact that we were so close to your factory was great. We did some early testing with Inmarsat and the Brick, and enabled us to do a lot of cool things for remote. So it was great to be a partner with you guys. Hope you can hear me there, Chris. I think there's a delay with the internet. You look like the internet's frozen. I'm not sure if I'm coming through or not. So I'll wait a minute here, and happy to present some pretty pictures whenever you guys are ready. Okay. So I'm in the chat here, and let me share my screen. And I think I can do that. Here we go. Okay, I'm just going to present, and hopefully you guys can see me and hear me okay. Yeah, I've been into astrophotography as a hobby for a long, long time, ever since the college days back in the late 70s. And I was introduced to an astrophotography course, and I was already into photography, the high school yearbook and college yearbook and that kind of thing. And when I started to learn about telescopes, I decided to combine the hobby of astronomy with photography, and the love was born then, and it hasn't gone away. So when I lived in Andover, Mass, I bought a fiberglass dome and remotely controlled it from my house only a few miles away. And the inside of the dome looks like this. It has a computer and a telescope, and basically I'm able to point it to whatever I want to, and take pictures remotely without having to go out in the cold or hang out by the telescope. Here's a little bit of a closer view of the telescope that was in the dome in Andover. You can see on the left side is the camera. These are specialized CCD imaging cameras that are designed for low noise and astrophotography. But eventually I got frustrated because of the New England winters, and when snow like this happened, I wasn't able to open the dome, obviously. So it's a long story, but going out to Arizona quite a bit, I decided to make some friends there with some land. This place is about 2 hours east of Las Vegas, called Meadview, Arizona, where I relocated my dome to. And you can see the construction here of putting the walls up and basically putting the dome in a truck and bringing it all the way out to Arizona, where it is quite clear, and I can use the hobby as much as I want to. I also wrote a lot of custom software to control the telescope and dome, turning power on and off, and making sure that the skies were clear before we opened up the telescope dome. That's kind of some of the pictures that you're seeing there. I also have some portable setups. This is a picture I took recently of my portable, one of my portable setups anyway. This is a 5-inch refractor telescope that I can bring out into the desert and set up and run off the 12 volts in the car.
Hey, Paul, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Apparently, my AT&T fiber internet is not everything that AT&T promised it would be. So apologies for disconnecting.
Oh, no problem. Am I okay to keep going here? I heard you, Chris. I'll just keep going unless you tell me to stop. But anyway, this is an example of the 5-inch portable setup that I can bring into the middle of nowhere. And just some examples of some pictures I was able to take. I mean, these are all deep sky objects. That's my specialty. This is the Whirlpool Galaxy. It's about an hour's worth of data. So I might take 6 10-minute exposures and stack them and use specialized software to produce this image. More recently, pictures have gotten sharper as I get better at the hobby. This is the California Nebula, the Tadpole Nebula, the Dumbbell Nebula. As you can tell, I like to take pictures of gaseous nebula in the sky. I think they're pretty. This is the Trifid, which is pretty famous. Over here, we have a picture of the Veil Nebula. This is a very dim nebula that's tough to capture, so you have to get to some really dark skies to get some good images there. And sometimes by using a wide field telescope, you can get 3 objects in the same frame, which is kind of fun. Here is an example of that, where we have 2 nebula and a globular cluster up at the top left-hand portion of the screen. Another one is the North American Nebula. You can see why it's called the North American Nebula. It resembles the continent. And this was actually taken during a full moon with some special filters that filter out light that would be a nuisance, basically light pollution. Rosette Nebula here. And finally, the Ring Nebula. So I think you've seen enough nebulas there. I also wanted to touch on the eclipses. I have a couple of eclipse pictures, one of which I took, the other one I can't take credit for. This one I did take many years ago in the Massachusetts area. It is a total lunar eclipse. And the thing I really like about this, besides the color of the moon, is the fact that you can see stars around the moon, which is something in the glare of a full moon that you really can never see. And finally, somebody from Dielectric up in Maine sent me this picture of the recent total solar eclipse that occurred a couple of weeks ago. And I wish I was there. I'm a skier and I'm a radio geek. And whoever was here and took this picture from Dielectric, I envy them. It's a beautiful shot. Um, and yeah, I hope some of you guys got a chance to see it. I got to see my first and only solar total eclipse back in 2017. I traveled out to Wyoming, and it was amazing experience. It's quite quite emotional, actually. I didn't think it was going to be, but you see the power of the sun really is evident when the moon passes in front of it, and it's pretty cool. So it's a lot of fun. I encourage anybody that's into looking up at the sky to continue to do that. And photography and astrophotography are great hobbies. They're not the cheapest hobbies in the world, but they're a lot of fun. So don't want to drone on here too
Hey,
much,
Paul.
but I'll turn it over to you, Chris.
Kind of hoping you can hear me now. Can you hear me
Yes.
now? I hope. Okay. Sorry about the internet issue. Apparently, my AT&T fiber is not everything that AT&T promised it would be. So, anyway, we're back. I got a couple questions for you. I had heard from somebody that if you were to use your cell phone to take a picture of the sun during the solar eclipse, it could damage the sensor in the actual phone. Is that something that you've heard of, or
Yeah,
any thoughts on that?
it can. The only time that's really safe for anybody to look up at the sun or to take a picture with your cell phone, and I got to believe this picture I'm showing now was taken with a cell phone, is during totality. The sun is so powerful that it will damage telescopes and damage people's eyes if they look directly at it. That's why they sell all these, glasses to look at the eclipse. But in terms of a cell phone, I have no experience as to having any damage, but I wouldn't do it. I would say it's likely that it could cause thermal problems.
But there are some like special filters you can get for telescopes and cameras, I would assume, if you're doing the solar stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And they're not expensive. In fact, there are even new smart telescopes that have come out, which are very inexpensive, that will point to the sun and the moon. And if you're pointing to the sun, you can actually see the sunspots. They of course require you to put one of their little filters on, but the filters are pretty widely available, and so it works out pretty well. Um, I have some friends who are really into solar photography, and the images they get are amazing. I don't have any on the slide deck to show you, but they use specialized telescopes that are filled with certain gases that filter out unwanted wavelengths, and the images you can get from some of these special telescopes are pretty spectacular.
So, Paul, I mean, your photos are outstanding, and I would assume that you might have become interested in astronomy as a kid, or maybe had a telescope that you got for Christmas, or how did you get involved in astrophotography in general?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I was always into photography. Even in high school, I was taking pictures for the yearbook. And in college, I took a course on astronomy and decided that sandwiching those two hobbies together was going to be very interesting, and it turned out to be a lifelong passion. Um, One thing I would caution people about is if you are interested in astronomy and you want to buy a telescope, do your research. Don't go to Walmart and buy an inexpensive telescope, because chances are you're not really going to get a good experience there, and it can really turn you off. There are a lot of good mail order places that you can get some pretty high quality stuff for not a lot of money. So what's really important besides the optics, what's just as important is the mount. If you don't have something that holds that telescope steady, it's going to be moving all over the place, and you're not going to be happy with the result. So get a telescope that's got a good solid mount. Celestron and Meade are some common names of manufacturers that make pretty good stuff.
Yeah, I've got a couple of those on my Amazon wish list under telescopes, so right there with you. Hey, Paul, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. It's a really cool hobby. It's one that's kind of outside of the realm of most broadcasters. I'm sure that there are some broadcasters that do it. But I'm really glad that you were able to share that with us. Paul Schillens, thanks for joining us today on Tech Talk Live, and we're going to wrap it up for today. Our next Tech Talk Live is going to be Friday, May 24th at 11 a.m. So be sure to mark your calendar and check social media for updates on our list of guests and topics that we'll talk about. So you can come check us out at the Media Production and Technology Show in London on May 15th and 16th in the HHB stand. And we're going to be with Streamport Media at CabSat in Dubai, May 20th through the 23rd. Special thanks to Paul from Techies for talking to us today. Also, Comrex Technical Director Tom Hartnett and the amazing Paul Schillens. Thanks for sharing all your astrophotography stuff with us. Grace and Julia from Comrex, thank you for all your help with Tech Talk Live, and a big shout out to Dirk Freeman Jr. from Steelboy with his technical assistance. Most of all, thank you for joining us today on Tech Talk Live. Be sure to come at us next month with your questions and comments. We'll have more interesting topics and Comrex talk. And thank you very much for joining us on Tech Talk Live.
Thanks for joining us on Tech Talk Live. If you have a topic you'd like to hear more about or a question for Ask a Techie, send it to ttl@comrex.com. And be sure to visit comrex.com for more information on Comrex products and services.